Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with BlackICE and Third Reich Events installed. We've had a couple of events pop up slightly later than they should because I had been playing once the war started, very short episodes. Okay, first one here is Higher SS und Police Leader North, basically, is what that says in English. This is Fritz Wetzel. He wrote this book in English. It's Celebration of the SS Family. One of the, new religion, new mode of living, not jobbery from the SS kind of book. I don't know, I haven't read it. I've just seen the cover of it, but that's basically what I take a lot of these things because, from the description that I read, it's not to celebrate the family, but these are family celebrations for the new SS religion is replacing Christianity kind of stuff. And so he's the author of that, and he was appointed to command the SS and Police Headquarters North, which is in Oslo here. So, and we can either send him up there or we can leave it to Quisling. Now that's sort of an interesting thing and why I did that. Quisling, not really sure whether Quisling was more of a fascist or national socialist. In the northern areas they often use swastikas for either party, and some of you, and especially the left, have often branded everybody, including like capitalists, as fascists. And they use that word almost for everybody. But there's a real difference between nationalist, fascists, and national socialists. A lot of people don't want to see it, but it is. And National Socialism has a religious, racial, sort of extremist component that the others did not have. They had a general economic philosophy in large ways, generally the same as fascism. They were both authoritarian systems. They both believed in state control of things. In those ways they were very similar, no doubt about it. But nowhere do I see in fascism, not to say that fascism is good or anything, I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say nowhere do I see in fascism the idea that just because, there's in fascism there's sort of a hyper-nationalism, and so, yeah, we are great, we're better than you are, whoever you are. But it's not like, oh, well, now we have to exterminate you, whoever the other is, just because we think of ourselves as being so wonderful. Fascism does have certain elements of maybe hate in it as well, but it's not like as I understand it, the hate, the fear. There was very much fear of the Jew in National Socialism, and so it's just another whole level above it. And so back to Quisling, I'm not really sure whether he's more of a National Socialist or a fascist, but being in that term, even as a National Socialist, he was a National Socialist, meaning he was a Norwegian patriot as he saw it. Obviously we have the modern day word Quisling, so I'm not going to debate how people in Norway should see him. I'm just saying how he saw himself as a Norwegian patriot. The SS and the people that Himmler sent up north into Norway wanted to incorporate eventually, at whether short-term, long-term, however they wanted to look at it, eventually Norway is part of the Greater German Reich, as all Aryans together. Not exactly sure how they viewed the Norwegians compared to the German Aryans or whatever, but they had all these weird ideas. But they were Aryans, and they thought it would eventually be one nation, where Quisling wanted Norway to be part of the Axis, to be part of the New World Order most assuredly, but he wanted it to still be Norway. So there was a growing conflict, and it continued through to the end. And it was never like a violent conflict as in shots being fired, but sort of a bureaucratic and diplomatic kind of conflict, and who had control over what departments or whose security was running what, and all these kinds of things. And so that's why we have the option to leave it to Quisling here. We're going to take the historical path and send up Wetzel, which creates an SS headquarters there, which we can attach to. And these were under Reinhard Heydrich, the Reich whatever, basically under the SD headquarters system. And so that's where that will go. And this, because we've taken this path, we will have future events happen that will deal with the expanding of the SS in Norway. And at least in this early stages, don't pay attention to these details and numbers, but it was a German SS element sent into Norway, not the later element that was locally grown SS elements as well. Okay, and another event that was delayed, use old Polish weapons, and we have choices: no, which will just give us a bunch of supplies, or yes, which it will cost us some manpower. So we're going to take that, and that event, again, as I say, should have happened before. And what it does is gives us 3 garrisons, and basically these the Poles used a German Mauser type in the same rifle in the same caliber as the German Mauser. They used a really nice manufactured copy of the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle, again in the German caliber. So a lot of the artillery, I don't know how close, if not exactly the same, I'm not sure the caliber, but enough that it's useful for creating some garrison troops here for basically free production costs, just manpower costs to recycle. They captured a lot of equipment. I'm sure there was a lot of it was damaged that either was unfixable or just simply got scrapped. This will give us our sort of northern garrison capabilities there. So that'll help that out. Okay. Now, and I just played a few days. We're still into December. Here we haven't gone to the first of the year. Just getting things a little bit set here. So we can continue this. I'm sending a few cores out of Greece that I don't think we'll need here, so that we're not having to supply them at the end of this supply chain. And I sent down some air fighters here to combat British bombers in this region. Party rally, yeah, that'll help us reduce national revolt risk and up our thing. Yes, we can. I wonder who says that nowadays. How's that going for everybody? Motorized HQ advance, that's good. Also help. Yes. We're getting a lot of armies and HQs around here. I'm not sure, not sure how many of these we're actually going to use. This is just a headquarters unit there. Should send this over somewhere so I remember to sign. I also fired off, okay, another little thing, fired off all the reorganization since the Greek campaign was done. Germany, in preparation for Barbarossa, understood that it needed to expand its number of panzer divisions. And I hope I'm not boring people with this, because I'm going to talk for a minute or two or something here. They had the experience of the campaign in the West to go by, and that greatly affected German military thought, because they had no anticipation of winning this so fast. I mean, a few really thought they were going to, but most just didn't understand it. And so that they saw that, and if you read a lot of the things, history books covering this period, often, they had 4 battalions of panzers, and then in 2 regiments, and then a regiment of motorized infantry, basically, with it. And they often the whole division wasn't in contact with the enemy at any one point, and it was shown to be sort of a battalion or 2 that could effectively engage the enemy at any one point. And so in the expansion to go to the east, they, generally speaking, took half the panzer battalions away from all the panzer divisions, replaced them with an additional sort of regiment of motorized infantry, and then the extra panzer regiments were given to other divisions that were upgraded to to motorized status, and again shifted a regular regiment away, because the 3-regiment system. They didn't need all 3 infantry regiments. And so the campaign in the West influenced this. Well, you can say it worked in the East, but not really. They weren't as right as they sort of thought they were. The campaign was so short in both duration and the range of territory it happened in. Well, in the invasion of Russia, and we can talk about it, and as we move there we probably will talk about it more. Obviously the Germans failed to take Moscow, and I'm looking at this and I'm seeing all these forts. There weren't anywhere near this fortification level, and they did build sort of a ring around part of it that was tank ditches and whatever. It wasn't any fortifications that stopped the Germans from getting to Moscow, and it wasn't even really the weather. That did have a major impact. I'm not trying to say it didn't. And they definitely ran out of time seasonally wise. But what really happened is that panzer divisions, by the time they were getting into this area, getting deep into it, they had like 6-8 tanks functional at that day. Doesn't mean that all the rest were destroyed. It doesn't mean that they were knocked out. It just means that mostly automotively they were strung out in field workshops being repaired. And so the division might theoretically number personnel be fairly well up to strength, but its main punching arm and they understood that you needed the concentration of that punching arm, not just little packets of tanks, was dissipated because of the duration of campaign and both the distance that it was going, because mud, sand, dust gets in automotive systems and wears them out rapidly as part of it. Part of it, obviously, just the driving distance and maneuvering in combat. And so also time, the amount of combat, the amount of shooting, because, and you can look at the North Africa campaign as a comparison, where with seesaw battles over it, they were often recovering their own tanks and repairing them, even losing them and leaving them as a wreck, and the enemy comes over and maybe ignores the tank for a while or tries to recover them, and we've plenty of things of either side marking up the enemy tanks with their symbols on of getting the vehicles back into operation, because they were going back and forth over the same territory. Well, so Germans, who at the start of the campaign were always advancing, weren't abandoning equipment just willy-nilly. They were trying to, especially their own equipment, they were trying to put it into workshops, things that got knocked out, to either be used for spares or to try to put them back together. So the formations themselves, as they were pushing in here, because they were fighting in here, it wasn't just a no resistance for most of this. We're having obviously combat losses as well, so the length of the fighting was much more, so they weren't able to sustain ongoing operations with the 2 battalion tank or Panzer division versus the 4 battalion Panzer division. And also in the west, or in the south as well, once the Americans got in, and the British, and as well as the British got tanks that were really dangerous and with larger caliber guns, they didn't have the that along here was Rommel retreats all the way back to here, but once he's retreated back here, the distances aren't so great, and then the fighting in Italy and the fighting in northern France doesn't have anything like the scale of distances, but the duration of the campaigns that the Americans showed up with, and it's Americans or British supplied by Americans, had so much more materiel and things like number of artillery rounds per gun available on any given day to be shot at the enemy. The Americans were delivering so many more of these things than the Germans were able to deliver, even once you're talking about in Italy, where they can run trains down from factories kind of thing, and not just sinking stuff as it gets shipped over. That the Americans were able to just with firepower and keep the intensity of combat going continuously, that would wear out the equipment as well, and wear out the divisions. So I took all the upgrades primarily, both one history, but primarily is because these are now instead of light panzer regiments, these are proper panzer, medium panzer regiments. So in that sense, they definitely needed to be upgraded, and you should upgrade them as well. But just some historical perspective is that they were right that number of divisions, maneuver elements were going to count and needed to be expanded here. They were right that this type of formation would work for the Battle of France. They're just not as sustainable, and so either they needed to have realistic goals. And I've often thought, if Napoleon, he just thought one more battle, and where's Borodino in here, fought the Battle of Borodino, and then marched into Moscow and found Moscow abandoned of food, so his army was starving. Had he, and he did have 3 prongs of his army moving into Russia at the time. It just, he was leading the primary main hitting force, and because when he attacked, normally like the Austro-Hungarians, or Austria, I guess at the time, you take the capital, and you win, or if you take the capital, the enemy has to then immediately mass its army to try to take it back, and if it fails, then you win. Well, the Russians didn't treat Moscow that way. They were just willing to retreat and starve them. Had Napoleon moved in, secured regions, set up supply systems, set up planned winter, build sort of log fortresses, if you will, and plan to have food for the winter, the Russians wouldn't have been able to successfully amass a significant enough counterattack to take them out. So he could have, in stages, continued to fight in Russia with his Grand Army, but he just, treated it again like you are fighting in Central or Western Europe. So, just my philosophy on some of the elements of why Germany failed. And obviously we have historically an unanswered question: what if had Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad, the first two, even just the first year, and Stalingrad the second year, had fallen? what would have happened with the Soviet Union? Would they have continued to fight? Would they have surrendered? Would they, if continuing to fight, would they have been simply holding, switch to this map, holding to the Urals along here, tried to find the mountains, holding along the Urals, which is a lot of territory, a lot of population, and it's not nearly this population, but stretching out German supply lines too much somewhere? Or would they have been able to successfully strike against the Soviet Union, or against the Soviet Union against Germany? Okay, enough pontificating on various things. Okay, what I'm also doing here, and we can show, I am running supplies into here right now. I've got a bunch, I've moved a little bit of my naval bombers, but mostly my currently had been just sitting and waiting conventional bombers to operations in this area to try to deal with any British subs or other things that are going to come in and try to intercept my supply lines. And here I'm using, see now, look, see what you can see here. I got, these guys are flying, I'm flying supplies in from Belgrade here to here with my big heavies, and I'm chewing up British air pretty bad here. Watch this real close until the battle's over. That unit. Let's see what this one does. And then I'm using these two to supply into Crete instead of having a sea supply. And I also have these fighters here. So right now we're waiting for the new year to come around, set our priorities, and also I checked here, and I don't want to start the war yet. As you can see, mud in North Africa, and it's mud here. So I'm refraining from continuing my blitz into the Mediterranean, not because I'm not planning on heading there, it's just I'm waiting for better conditions, which I think is a responsible thing to do. I could start it now, and I guess the British may bang their head against the Italians, but I don't know. So I'm just deciding to fight these little battles here. And we can also get more. Take a look here. So the Japanese, yes, they're doing pretty well. Look at their strength. Some of these units are getting used up a bit. The smart thing they've done is they've done an amphibious operation down here, which hopefully will deal with these other forces, forced China to spread out. Yeah, I've stuck a few markers here to try to like go, hey, here's some goals you might want to do. You know, invade here. Hoping they would invade as opposed to just simply try to conquer their way down there. Okay, first of the year here. Back over here. So we've lost the silent guns of December reorganization rate. Uh-oh. We've had an outbreak here. Partisan activity. Those guys are going to be moved with them here, so. Little annoying here. Send the police and the militia up here. Okay, we're going to send those guys in. Now, since it's 41, we have the ability to go to total economic mobilization. Historically, this really didn't happen until the end of 41, beginning of 42, when the major Russian winter setback, the first year there that the Russians counterattacked. Germany was still trying, Germany had won the ground war. It was over. It had a Luftwaffe. It was still bombing Britain and at this time, and there was still the naval submarine war going on, but it was thought the war was going to be winding down. And so they actually slowed up tank production during this time period, and things like that. I think maybe partially to rethink some tank design choices instead of, to stop making the 37 millimeter gun Panzer IIIs to get ready to upgrade and things like that. But they slowed down production when they should have kept it going full blast or increased it. But we will increase that. So we get that, and espionage focus. We're going to continue economic spying. Annual national focus, mostly for the manpower. We're going to continue Divamat. Economic boost, because we're not going to be doing any more major structural improvements, so we want the short-term improvements. The Viking division, yes, we want the Viking division. The Viking division, or Viking, or however you want to say it, was made up of the German regiment and units formed out of Norway, Denmark, few Swedish volunteers. So yeah, we'll take that. Thinking about my 41 campaign in the Mediterranean, and we may be needing him for an assault on Gibraltar, so we're going to send him over this way. And you can do anti-partisan duties there. Industry fine-tunes the war machine. Not quite sure what that does. I wish it was somehow better explained, so I knew I don't really have a choice other than not hitting it. And we'll create these two infantry divisions. Just yet. Okay, we'll send them east. Since they're going to take a while to get recruited up. Got a lot of stuff we want produced here. Yeah. Mostly packed with their air my ships as well. They do imported products. I'm intercepting them and killing their. Yes, we want self-propelled artillery for that. This German occupation policies in the east. Okay. We have two options here. The Rosenberg-Schundorf plan. I don't know who Schundorf is. I know who Rosenberg. He was a nasty guy. Or the Ribbentrop plan. The Ribbentrop plan is basically set up puppet states and leaves the Soviet Union largely intact. The Rosenberg plan set up the Reich Commissars. I think we're going to do that this time. I'm not sure how good the puppet state mechanism works for the Reich Commissars as opposed to direct rule, but we're going to take that this time to see how it goes. And yes, we'll expand the air bases. And the greater industrial effect is hit. That should start producing more of those units. I know we haven't run the clock much. It's mostly just the first of the year and me talking a lot. There's Rommel. Okay, well they are hurting us a little bit, but we're battling back. Okay, welded plate construction. Advanced armor designs, we want that. Most assuredly. And I think we're already in the red because of several changes we made. Not nice. Okay, yes, we need these ships. Unfortunately. Supplies to Athens. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll take these. Okay. Take that. Yes, we'll take the radar. That will help. I'm going to get these guys out of here before they're destroyed by bombing. No. I'm going to risk a move. Possible naval interception. I'm going to risk it and head up here. Right when out of the bombing ranges. Some of these units here. Okay, spotting advance. That's nice. We'll just take that off there. And national recruiting policy for this year. We're again going to go with a balanced approach. We're going to get through without being intercepted. Okay, another thing. You can see here that this has been for game mechanics granted to Germany, but by BlackICE. But you can see the revolt risks are pegged at 2% here. The Corinthian plebiscite, that's medal to commemorate it, was after Germany invaded and occupied Slovenia in April 41. Now, this is based just, I think it's 30 days after taking the territory. This event pops up. And we can hold the plebiscite or not. This is the Reich, and this is to vote. And I don't know how fair it was. I've shown some of the examples of the voting slips for some of the other elections, but theoretically the Germans won. And it's still that, but hopefully, well, it does show here that we now gain some cores here in some of these provinces. So that should reduce revolt risk in a while. Okay, support our allies. Another event from foreign aid air bases. Again, I was a bit peeved that there is no, got a Croatian Air Force. There was a Croatian Air Force historically, and even if we went for that sort of greater Croatia option, here's their only air base way down here of 2. So this allows us, if you want, you can decide not to build level 2 air base, a pillbox, just give them better defense and some anti-aircraft guns, and we will do that. I wonder if Croatia will bring its aircraft, because it had its aircraft before. Up here, well, they're not here at the moment. And we also got these guns. Well, I can do this some other time if I'm a leader for that. More defensive setup for Norway there. Alright, I think it's about time to end this episode. I know we really haven't moved the clock forward, but it just, I guess, me talking mostly and getting the first of the year set up here. So next planned moves are, we're going to figure out, well, we're going to bring it at some point, once we're ready, we're going to bring Italy into the war. Then we're going to see about an airborne invasion to take one or more of these ports here. And then once we do that, this will be after we get this better organized, we will ship in some armored divisions as well as some light infantry divisions and take Egypt and this coastal region here, sealing off the eastern end of the Mediterranean, and then at leisure take Cyprus. Sometimes had Italy do that though. Well, I normally sort of ignore Malta, just let it starve once you get that, and then we'll see about going after Gibraltar once we get that as well. Then we seal up the Mediterranean. If we control enough of these spots, there won't be the sort of auto invasions, Operation Torch, historical ones there in Italy, and then we just have to worry about, I've had Canada invade here a lot in some games. Okay, thanks for watching. We will be continuing this.